Hello everyone, it's me, Giles with a J, the person who personally narrates this channel. Just remember, that will never change. We're on season 21 and the theme is strange and unusual, so if you have any suggestions that fit that theme, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, if you enjoy the show, slap that subscribe button, uppercut the like button, and turn on notifications. I post new episodes twice a week, a long episode every Monday and a shorter episode every Thursday. Now, on to the show. In May of 2019, police in South Yorkshire, England were called to a house to do a welfare check on 6 children. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the children, some of whom were unresponsive, and took the 2 adults at the house into custody. But it wasn't the attack on the children that would become the most shocking discovery that day. This is Monsters. It was 7:30 a.m. on May 24, 2019, when at least a dozen police cars arrived at Gregg House Road in northern Sheffield. Just a few minutes prior, a woman named Sarah Barrass sent a text message to a friend that read, quote, "He's trying to kill us and Tristan and Blake are already dead." At least 12 police cars, some reporting up to 15, arrived at the property and officers stormed the house. Inside, they found 2 adults and 6 children aged from 7 months to 14 years old. Some of the children were unresponsive, and though some were not, they were all rushed to the hospital. The 2 oldest children, 14-year-old Blake and 13-year-old Tristan, were not able to be resuscitated, but the other children recovered. Officers took both of the adults into custody as they investigated the situation. 34-year-old Sarah Barrass was the mother of all 6 children and was believed by her neighbors to be a single mother who was doing everything she could to raise her family with the help of her 39-year-old half-brother Brandon Machin. It was early in 2019 that Sarah went to Child Services and asked for help dealing with autism and ADHD in some of her children. That set in motion a series of visits from a social worker that would ultimately uncover a dark secret that Sarah had been keeping from everyone. She told people that all the children had the same father, but he wasn't involved in their lives. She told the children that their father had died serving in the military. During World War II, more than 50 years before the oldest child was even born. Obviously, the children were too young to comprehend that, but what if one of them had mentioned that to a friend or a teacher? And maybe one of them had said that to a social worker because they seemed unsatisfied with the absence of the children's father and Sarah's story that her half-brother was just a helping hand. There were also allegations of sexual assault lodged against both of her eldest children. First, an allegation against 14-year-old Blake emerged in November of 2018. Followed by a similar claim against 13-year-old Tristan in May of 2019. All of that caused the social worker to upgrade the children's statuses from child in need to child in protection. That would have increased the amount of scrutiny that Sarah was under, and she decided that it would be too much. What investigators would eventually learn was that it was Brandon who was the father of all 6 children. Brandon and Sarah shared a mother and both grew up in the care system. Their mother had suspected them of having been in a relationship in their teens and reported it to social services, but Sarah denied the claim and there was nothing more done. When Brandon aged out of the care system, the 2 were separated for a few years, but once Sarah was also out, they reunited and she became pregnant with their first child together when she was 19. They always lived separately, and he played the part of helpful brother when in reality he was the children's biological father. When the social worker indicated that she was going to be inspecting their lives more thoroughly, Sarah developed an overwhelming fear that the authorities would discover the incestuous relationship. Prosecutors told Sheffield Crown Court that the pair, quote, decided the children were better off dead than in care. According to court testimony, Sarah told the police she, quote, would rather see them dead than in care. Brandon later revealed that Sarah had declared, quote, they need to die now. I'd rather kill them and kill myself than lose them to care. I gave them life and I can take it away. It's yet another story of someone claiming they were going to kill someone else and then themselves, yet they never seem to get to the part where they end their own lives. I think the truth is that they selfishly kill someone else and only added themselves to the list of potential victims to gain sympathy after the fact. The prosecutor explained that the couple's fear of their relationship being exposed intensified their desperation. She said, quote, although clearly the defendants were motivated to prevent the loss of their children to the care of the local authority, this was combined with their fear of the authorities becoming aware of their unnatural relationship. The final trigger appeared to have been a phone call on May 23rd when Sarah was informed of another alleged sexual assault by Tristan against a child, with the caller threatening to report the matter to social services. On the evening of May 23rd, Sarah and Brandon gathered tablets from around Sarah's home, primarily using prescribed ADHD medication that belonged to one of the children. They divided those pills among their 4 eldest children and forced them to take the medication despite their resistance. In court, the prosecutor explained, quote, none of the children wanted to take the tablets but were forced to do so. Sarah and Brandon expected the tablets to kill the children overnight. Throughout that night, Sarah posted on social media claiming the children had caught a sickness bug. However, by morning, it became evident their poisoning attempt had failed. Upon realizing that, Sarah immediately contacted Brandon, summoning him back to her home. First, they targeted Blake, with Brandon strangling him using his hands. Simultaneously, Sarah strangled Tristan with her dressing gown cord, applying pressure for approximately 3 minutes. To ensure both teenagers were dead, they switched victims and then placed plastic bags over the boys' heads. After murdering the 2 teenagers, the couple immediately turned their attention to the younger children. They ran a bath and repeatedly attempted to drown one of the younger siblings, who fought back and survived the murder attempt. Realizing the enormity of what they had done, Sarah barricaded herself in a bedroom with her 4 surviving children. She then texted a friend, quote, he's trying to kill us and Tristan and Blake are already dead. Her friend contacted police around 7:45 a.m., while Sarah did the same thing. When officers arrived at the Shire Green home, Sarah initially claimed her other 2 children were with neighbors. However, one of the surviving children silently signaled to a police officer what had happened by drawing his hand across his throat. Sarah immediately told the child to, quote, stop, don't say that. Sarah initially tried to pin the attack solely on Brandon. Police found evidence that after the failed poisoning attempt, Sarah had conducted extensive online research for alternative murder methods. Computer records revealed searches for suffocation, strangulation, and drowning as she methodically planned the next attempt. Notably, investigators found earlier messages where Sarah had contemplated her options, writing, quote, I've thought of every possible solution to this mess. Mass murder, putting them all in care, checking into the local nut house. I love my kids too much to kill them. I can't put them into care for the same reason. That contradictory statement ultimately gave way to her horrific final decision. In the end, both Sarah and Brandon pleaded guilty to the murders and attempted murders of the children. In November of 2019, Sheffield Crown Court delivered its judgment on what prosecutors described as crimes of nothing but evil. The court opted against imposing rare full life terms, instead sentencing both Sarah and Brandon to concurrent life sentences with a minimum of 35 years for the murders. Additionally, they received concurrent life sentences with minimum terms of 10 years for the counts of attempted murder and conspiracy to murder. The judge delivered a scathing assessment of the killer's justification, telling Sarah directly, quote, You considered your love for them and fear of being parted from them entitled you to take their lives as well as your own. Throughout the sentencing hearing, the court heard how visitors to Sarah's house frequently overheard her threatening her children with the chilling phrase, quote, I gave you life, I can take it away. The prosecutor characterized the case as, quote, an appalling crime in which 2 young lives were lost and a family torn apart, leaving a community in shock. Heartbreaking statements from the emotionally broken surviving children were read in court, with one child expressing they wanted their parents imprisoned for 300 years. Another child voiced fears they might become a murderer themselves. The defense attempted to mitigate Sarah's culpability by describing her as profoundly damaged by her childhood, during which she suffered neglect and various forms of abuse. He said, quote, the defendant was desperate to prevent her children being taken into care. She couldn't cope with the prospect of them being removed. Experts noted that child killers typically face grim prospects in prison, saying, quote, in a lot of cases of child homicide, the parents don't last very long in prison. They're at very high risk of suicide and at very high risk of attack. I doubt very much they will live to see the end of their sentences. Following the murders, authorities launched a comprehensive investigation into potential warning signs missed by the system. A serious case review, or SCR, commissioned by Sheffield Children's Safeguarding Partnership, examined how a supposed loving mother and supportive uncle could transform into killers without detection. The SCR reached a surprising conclusion, determining there was no evidence that practitioners could have predicted or anticipated the parents' actions. The review described Sarah as a loving, caring, and competent mother who advocated and fought hard for her children. Remarkably, the review identified significant evidence of effective and caring practice with the children by all agencies involved with the family. David Ashcroft, chair of Sheffield Children's Safeguarding Partnership, nevertheless acknowledged areas for improvement, particularly in understanding harmful sexual behavior, taking holistic views of family engagement, and paying closer attention to male caregivers. The 4 surviving children faced a devastated future in the wake of their siblings' murders. Court statements reveal the deep psychological wounds inflicted by witnessing such horrific events at the hands of trusted caregivers. 2 of the surviving children directly witnessed their brothers being attacked, creating profound trauma that experts say they, quote, will continue to experience is unimaginable. One child expressed fear they would become a murderer when they were older because, quote, that's what their mom and Brandon did. Another, who Sarah and Brandon attempted to drown, has developed a fear of baths. Court documents describe the children as emotionally broken. They repeatedly asked questions that have no answers, such as why and how that happened to their family. The 2 older survivors particularly struggle knowing they will not see their big brothers again and not see their other siblings every day. The judge acknowledged that inevitably they will require a significant amount of support. The long-term consequences for them as they grow older and become aware of what happened cannot be known, but it's likely to be significant. Following consultations with the surviving family members, Sanctuary Housing demolished the crime scene on February 17, 2021. The property stood as a permanent reminder of the tragedy for traumatized neighbors. The site now features a memorial garden with a central tree. A local resident commented, quote, this will hopefully be a very lovely memorial garden for not only siblings and family members, but also the community that was rocked by such a horrible tragedy. I started this show covering cases of filicide, the act of a parent murdering their own children. It is unfortunately not uncommon, or at least not uncommon enough, and this story would have already been shocking. The incest aspect being added to the case made this story stand out even more and will leave a lasting impression on the community that lived amongst these monsters. Thanks so much for letting me tell you this story. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave a comment. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.